Let's go. We see that hype outside. Right from now.
Hey guys, Golden here, and welcome to day 13 of the Fortnite versus Apple lawsuit trial. Although 13 is an unlucky number, today was not an unlucky day for neither Apple or Epic, and today Apple finally got their chance to prove Epic's points wrong and have a comeback against Epic, and they brought up some really good points today, which I'll be discussing. But at the end, Epic actually got a chance to ask the Apple representative questions, and Epic also brought up some really good points as well. So today I really don't know who won, so you guys are gonna have to watch today's video and let me know what you guys think down below. But either way, guys, I think today we have heard the best points coming up from both sides, so make sure you guys watch until the very end. But either way, you guys know I don't want to waste you guys this time, so let's get right on into it. Today's trial actually started off with the judge explaining how she will go through the last day of the trial on Monday, May 24th. However, we will not actually be getting a verdict right afterwards because she apparently has hundreds of other cases to deal with. So unfortunately, guys, the judge just confirmed on Monday, the final day of the trial, we will actually not know who won, and there's a chance we might have to wait up to a few weeks to even a month before we get a final answer. I mean, hopefully it lasts a few days. However, there is a chance that we might actually have to wait a lot longer. I don't really know how this stuff works. But anyways, Apple's lawyer that actually confirms that Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, will be coming into the courtroom at the start of the day on Friday. But Apple then finally gets into their points, and they explain how they actually sent over 500 million marketing communications about Fortnite before the ban. It spent just under $1 million in the 11 months before the ban, which is more than any game on the App Store. So basically, Apple's point is we treated Epic super well. You know, we supported their app, we advertised it and all this stuff, putting $1 million into their game, which is more than any other game in the App Store, just for them to basically backstab us. But Apple actually also explains how their relationship with Epic was very intense. They were apparently receiving 3 a.m. calls, Christmas phone calls, and stuff like that in the middle of the night just to basically call Apple complaining about something or asking to obviously get their update on the App Store. Now, Shamid from Apple, who's the Apple representative on the stand, actually said that he guessed that Apple made over $100 million from Fortnite on iOS. So I mean, guys, that is a lot of money to make from an app for not actually creating the app. I mean, $100 million, that's a lot of money. Even though obviously Fortnite was in the App Store for a really long time, still, that's a lot of money for basically just approving updates and, you know, running it on their App Store and maybe advertising a little bit. But Epic then actually explains how they had an issue in 2019 and Apple apparently didn't respond to their email explaining the issue for 2 whole weeks. I mean, guys, imagine if the issue was like, oh, we can't release a new season on the App Store because you guys haven't approved it or something like that, and it takes 2 weeks for the update to actually come onto iOS. I mean, guys, that would suck. But anyways, Craig Federighi then takes a stand, and here's where Apple really starts making some really solid points against Epic. And by the way, guys, Craig is one of the highest people up at Apple, similar to Tim Cook, and that's because he's actually the head of software engineering at Apple. But anyways, Federighi starts off by explaining how Apple wanted the app installation to be something which users could very easily do without worrying about security issues. And Federighi continues on to this, explaining how iPhones are very attractive targets for virus providers because they are very personal devices which have very important personal information such as your contacts, photos, and many other things, making them valuable to an attacker. So Apple's point was clearly we put a lot of money and a lot of time into making sure that the iOS devices were secure because they need to be secure. Then they actually talk about quote-unquote sandboxing, which if you guys didn't watch my previous video, sandboxing is basically like a layer of protection on iOS devices which protect the device from many security issues. However, Epic actually claimed that sandboxing was completely enough security to protect the device, and the app review was apparently not useful. But Federighi actually claimed that sandboxing is useful, but not enough. So clearly Apple's claiming that obviously, although sandboxing is a very important feature on iOS devices, in the end of the day, the app review process is one of the most important features on iOS devices to make sure all the apps are secure on their devices. And Apple then actually explains how app reviewers can decide if an app like a calculator should be asking for access to sensitive health data, and obviously they should not be asking for that kind of data, and whether an app is obviously dangerous. Now, lawyer then actually asks Apple, would allowing third-party apps change security on iOS? And Federighi says dramatically, because no human review would be enforced, so you could put an unsafe app up and no one would check the app. So not a bad point from Apple, because overall, as you guys know, obviously if there was no app review and if apps could just be free, like you could just release it on Safari, obviously no one would be checking in the apps, so they could just be stealing all your information, stuff like that, which is basically Apple's claim. Now finally, the judge actually gets involved, asking there are multiple stores on Macs, so why should we not allow the same stores to exist on iOS devices? So clearly the judge kind of siding with Epic there, but Apple actually then says it's often exploited on Macs, and iOS has a dramatically higher bar for customer protection, and Macs do not meet that bar today. So it seems like Apple is basically throwing the Macs under the bus and explaining how Macs are not nearly as known to be secure as iOS devices. Now the judge continued and also talks about how Epic claimed that iOS and Android don't have drastic security differences, and Apple showed a report claiming that Android has 30 to 50 times as many infections as iOS. I mean, guys, according to Apple, it's not even close. Now, then they actually discussed the Enterprise program, which you guys didn't know is basically Apple's program to essentially get any app on iOS devices without any approval from Apple. However, only large corporations are actually able to get access to this. So basically, Apple explained how if you want to be in the Enterprise program, you have to be a large corporation and you have to develop apps for the employees, not the users outside of the business. So you have to be an employee in order to obviously get these apps on your iOS device. Now, Lloyd then actually asks, does this program demonstrate that iOS can be perfectly safe without app review? And Fedorgi actually explains how this is not the case, and it's actually the opposite, because he explained how the Enterprise program has been an area of significant abuse, and explains how people actually have signed up as fake companies and set up alternative app stores which are full of malware, which is kind of a solid point from Apple, because overall, who wants malware on the devices? Now, Lord then actually asks, can't people just not use stores that they don't trust? And Fedorgi says no. If developers wanted to get around certain app store policies protecting privacy or other reviews, they may make sure that their app is only available through an alternative app store, requiring users to use third-party app stores to get their favorite apps. So basically, Apple's point here is if these developers want to obviously bypass their unfair restrictions, they're going to want to make a third-party app store, which could potentially risk security and overall basically force users to get a third-party app store to get some of their favorite apps that they actually want to use on their iOS devices. But yeah, that was pretty much all of Apple's points. We now get into Epic asking Fedorgi questions, and here's where it got good. Epic's Jonathan Evan then came up to the stand, and it got good. So he starts off by asking if the current model from Apple is favorable to developers, and according to Apple's Fedorgi, he said yes. But Epic then continues and explains how Apple has not had a single developer come into the court to defend it, despite Apple claiming they have good relationships with their developers. So, I mean, as you guys know, Epic has had multiple app developers who have gotten their apps rejected and stuff like that coming as a witness for Epic against Apple. However, Apple has not been able to get a single developer on their side in this situation, which is kind of crazy. Now, Epic actually shows a document from 2007 where the security lead team actually recommended that Apple opens up its OS system to third-party app stores. And they basically explain how they recommend allowing devs to distribute third-party apps, and they explain how there would be no security risks because of iOS devices built-in security. And Apple's 2007 team actually explained how apps distribution on iOS would be safer than other platforms. And this team continued explaining how developers should be able to run their apps on iOS devices without approval from Apple. So basically, the first developers of the iOS system, the people who made this operating system, said themselves that they believe that they should allow third-party app stores on the App Store. Overall, just allow third-party apps on iOS devices. And they actually continued explaining how basically the sandboxing system, or like the security features on the iOS device itself, are enough to protect it from malware, which is kind of crazy to hear. And although obviously this was many years ago now, I feel like overall, if anything, the sandboxing system or iOS devices security has improved. And I feel like if you're one of the first creators of the iOS operating system, you should kind of have an idea of what would work and what wouldn't work. Now, Epic actually continued to bash Apple, explaining how if Apple allowed third-party app stores, their store would still have the biggest audience because of it automatically being on iOS devices. And they actually asked Fedorgi if this is correct, and Apple said sure. So basically, Epic's point here is, although obviously, yes, there would be third-party app stores, overall, the App Store would still be the most successful platform on iOS devices. So the point was, apps would most likely still stay in the App Store, even if Epic wins this lawsuit. Now, Epic then actually said, so other stores would have to compete to be downloaded, and Apple says, I think so. And there it is, guys. That's exactly what Epic wants. Competition. And Apple just said it themselves that obviously if they allowed third-party apps on iOS devices, there would be competition who try to get their app store installed over other app stores, which is again what Epic wants on iOS devices. Now, Epic actually continued explaining how the Apple App Store is known to be very secure, so all their app stores on Apple devices would start from scratch and have to compete to be as secure as the App Store. Correct? And Apple says they wouldn't necessarily be starting from scratch, such as like Steam's and other platforms, but overall, yes, they would have to try to compete to be as secure as the App Store. So I mean, guys, again, Epic continuing to explain how security would not be too big of an issue. Now, Epic's lawyer then actually asked Fedorgi a question, and Fedorgi starts talking over the lawyer, and Epic's lawyer and Apple literally start yelling at each other until the judge was actually forced to step in and told Apple to simply answer the question with a yes or no. So I mean, guys, that's not really good looks for Apple, and the judge actually had to step in there to obviously tell Apple to just simply answer the question. Now, Epic then actually asked, could you implement all the protections on macOS and iOS? And Fedorgi says, technically yes. Now, Epic then actually explained how an app could secretly sneak in bad content into an app and then do a server-side change to put malware or other security risking content onto the app. So similar to kind of how Epic added their direct payment system, and Apple actually said that this is the case. So although Apple claims its app review is very important, if a malware provider really wanted to steal users' info, they could easily likely get past the app review, but still the built-in services on Apple devices would keep the device mostly safe. So I mean, guys, that was a really solid point from Epic, basically explaining how the app review is not as important as Apple makes it sound. So there it is, guys. That is everything you need to know about day 13 of the Fortnite versus Apple trial. Thank you guys so much for watching until the very end. Today was a crazy day, and honestly, I don't know who won today. Apple brought up some really solid points at the beginning, but at the end, Epic also brought up some really solid points. But again, guys, we still have like 3 more days left of this trial, and Tim Cook's gonna be coming up, which is gonna be crazy. So make sure you guys tune in for the rest of this trial. It is getting really good now as we are coming to an end of this trial. But yeah, you guys already know what to do. Subscribe with those post notifications on, and drop a like for more content like this one. But either way, guys, this has been golden. Do with this information as you will, and I will see you all in the next one.